Hey, what's up? We're the Real Culture Queens. I'm Assia.
And I'm Kait.
And today we're getting really real about Harriet and how the film challenges what you thought you knew about one of history's most revered figures. So, what's interesting about this film is that it focuses on a 10-year period of Harriet's life that sparked her lifelong career in abolition, as a suffragist and an activist. So first off, we really got to delve right into the acting with Cynthia Erivo.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
I think, first of all, that it's amazing that this is her. She was in Bad Times in El Royale,
yes,
which I didn't see. I really wanted to.
Okay.
But this is her first main big role. And besides this, from what I saw on IMDb, she was only in like a few episodes of TV shows. So this is like her, not only her big breakout, but this is like a leading huge role about a big figure, and she carried it. She carried it all the way through.
I agree. I mean, like, honestly, Cynthia is just a gem, and I think the screen loved her. I just loved watching her in this role. One of the most exciting things is that I've been waiting such a long time to see a film about one of my heroes come to life in this way. And she breathed so much life into this role. It was like everything that I hoped for. Because Harriet is one of those figures that belongs to history, right? I mean, you often, when you think of these figures, they're so huge, they're larger than life, and they often, through time and just through all the great work that they've done, have lost that kind of human element,
right,
which made them almost inaccessible in a kind of way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, or like what would be, I was gonna say overheroized. Would be like a term where you're like, they're inaccessible, but like they're almost too good to be true.
Yeah, it's almost like mythological.
Exactly.
Yes. It's almost like a Johnny Appleseed, and I'm sure, like, I've been reading a lot of think pieces on it before we did this, and for sure, what scared me, or I shouldn't say scared, but it was new to me because I had been so close to her that I didn't realize people thought of her in the same way that one would Johnny Appleseed. It seems like unfathomable to me.
It's a weird comparison, yeah.
It is weird. I was like, really? How is she not real? Like, I know that she's a real person. She was very well documented. She lived a very long life and had a very great career. And how could she be compared to, like, frickin' apple butter on Columbus Day? Which was a thing when we were kids, by the way.
And sounds delicious.
Oh, imperialism.
Apple butter.
Oh, God. Happy Indigenous Peoples Day. So yeah, I mean, it was one of those things where I was just waiting for this to happen. And Cynthia, I think, did an incredible job just bringing her to life and really diving into those things that not only talked about sort of like the bullet points, like I thought about this as like, if you're giving a quiz on all the heroes in history, you're going to check off that she was a suffragette. You're going to check off that, she freed over 900 slaves. You're going to check off all these little things that you memorize.
Right, facts.
But you didn't know her as the person, as the individual.
Humanized her, for sure.
And this film does that. It made you feel close to her, like you understood her bigger than just, bullet points.
And it wasn't just the script, and the script was really good, which we'll tackle later, but I feel like her specifically, you're right, like as an actress, she clearly felt it. I think so I feel like, and I'll try not to jump ahead too much, but the script was really well written, but beyond that, they only said as many words as they felt, I thought. And the rest of it was in action. And her eyes engaged you to really see who she was. I feel like her knowledge of what she took in from the character, and I'm sure, everyone had a part in that. But I feel like her gaze throughout it, and there's certain scenes I feel like you really see that shine through. But I feel like you could see it in her that she felt that part, and that it was so genuine, and that what was humanizing about her.
And you know what? You're so right. Because when you compare her in terms of her words in comparison to everyone else, she was she had far less in terms of what she was saying as into what she was also emoting.
Yeah.
You know?
And what she was actually doing.
A lot, which was a huge part of the Underground
The singing
Railroad.
was
singing
amazing.
Songs carried so much information, so I love how that was something that they felt like was integral, and it should be that they didn't separate that at all.
She had
and
a
using
lot
the
of
fact that she's a singer, they
yes,
really,
I mean,
it was smartly cast, and I thought she did that. You know, Harriet was a woman as a few words, but what she said had weight and meaning. Whereas there was so much talk around her with some of the other characters within the film.
Agreed. And just a side note, I'm really excited to see her play. I don't have National Geographic's, but I'm going to find it. And Genius when she plays Aretha Franklin. I've only in my head. Okay. Wait, no, I'm gonna mess this up.
No such thing.
No, I could. Who does Beyonce play in Cadillac?
Etta James.
Etta James. Mm-hmm. Never mind. Totally screwed that up. But I'm very...
I was waiting to see where you go. I was like, wait, how does this...
No tie.
Okay, that's fine. That's totally
fine. But in my head, that's what came.
This is what we're here for.
In my head. And I was
these are the conversations that we have, you guys.
We have no fact checker. We are our facts. Don't worry, we researched it.
We
on spot, I mean.
True. This is all happening in real life. But yeah, so I honestly, I think to your note in the fact that she's had very little screen time, if you will, whether it's small screen or the silver screen, she really showed off all of her acting chops in this. I thought she was phenomenal.
I know. I'd love to see what her audition was for this.
Right?
To be like, okay, we're going with her. This because that's a big role, and for someone with not as much experience. But I look, she's
intimidating.
She's already got 3 huge roles lined up, big feature films lined up about him, and none of them are biopics. I know that the Aretha Franklin was an example, but they're no biopics. They're just fictional stories. So it's people were yes, we have totally put our heart and soul in the backing of knowing that she's a really good actor.
Yes. And the big thing that she brought to this role that I love so much is that she really showed the struggle with so many life issues on top of enduring the many horrors of chattel slavery. Because I think when you're thinking solely of all of the historical elements, you lose sight of the other motivations that she had as a person. Part of one of her reasons of going back was to get her husband, and how emotional that was for her in that journey in so many ways. Because she made that journey 90 to 100 miles by herself, and then to go back,
which was shocking to William Still.
Yeah, William Still. Yeah, when she met William Still in Philadelphia. But yeah, she goes back to get her husband, and showing that heartache and that heartbreak really made you feel like you knew Harriet more than just through history.
And I think so when she goes back and she has that that vision, these premonitions from God, I feel the way that Cynthia did that, I feel could have really have come off as cheesy or campy or just kind of silly. If anyone else, a lot of people would have done it. But I feel she was so rooted in that belief, and it and probably partially the way they shot it, but the way that she just had this look about her that said, I believe what I'm looking upon.
Yes.
And I'm going to absorb that and take it in. It didn't come off as anything but her truth.
Yeah.
And that's a big pivotal. Real. It was a pivotal part of that film. If that itself had not taken off, then you would have just been who is this crazy person, but she so deeply believed this character and those things, those roles, that it came off very well.
Yeah, for sure. I think like, oh God, and speaking of William Still, Leslie Odom Jr., oh my God. First of all, I fucking love him. He is perfection, which is literally my note on the screen right there. How is he not perfection? Because I mean, he's already really well known for how he's really portrayed historical figures. Obviously, Aaron Burr from Hamilton, where he's won a Tony Award for his portrayal, and I mean,
I saw him on the Murder Orient Express. Is that the name of that movie? The Murder.
Oh, the Orient Express. Yeah.
That's when I first saw him.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I loved him.
Well, however you have seen Leslie, guys, is let me tell you, his portrayal of William Still, I thought was what's smart. In fact, some of the things that he had said about just doing that, I thought was so brilliant. I don't want to read like the whole thing of what he said, but honestly, his approach was trying to make them real. In fact, I don't even know if I can pull this up because that's how slow my computer is. But he was just talking about how he wanted to approach William as a real person. And you and I had this conversation about, like, even though history perceives them as really progressive, they were still people of their time. And I thought what was great is when he was going in and he first meets, William first meets Harriet, and he's doing what would later turn into some of his writings about capturing the narratives of these fugitive slaves, right?
Which I love, that knowing that this is going to be very valuable information later on, and we need to get as much of it as possible. I love that.
So his approach is that it's very caring, but it's almost like clinical, the way he's documenting it in that first interaction with her, right?
Right.
But then
he's like a doctor for sure.
Yes. And he even says to your note, one of your notes is that like he thought she might have possible brain damage because Harriet was talking about how she had these visions and blah blah blah, and again talking about the horrors of chattel slavery, all these different abuses where masters would abuse them for one reason or the other. And with Harriet, it was specifically that she was caught in between another altercation between someone else that was also on the plantation and just happened to be in the way of that blow. But these were things that he had documented, and he treated her with that same kind of that reverence but distance until he got to really know and understand her. And you saw that relationship develop and unfold through this film. She
proved herself as not having brain damage, that she really did, in her terms, speak to God.
Yes, because if you guys aren't familiar, a lot of what Harriet described in her own oral histories to biographers was that she was always very much led by God in all of the work that she did and had visions. And although religion has always run parallel to the abolitionist movement, the way it's portrayed in this film is that William, very much thought that was still accredited to some of the violence that she had endured. Like that was something that, was brain damage in essence when they showed them writing that note. Right?
She specifically, because she had come by herself. She said, I came by myself and with God.
Yes.
And her journey by herself through, as the priest or reverend or whatever, he had said, wilderness. He was like, you need to be, if you get out of here without being captured, like,
you still have to endure this.
Yeah, this fear of being in nature. And this is not a super colonized plot of land, right? So it's like there's bears. It's like now you can camp probably here to Pennsylvania and you probably wouldn't run into any bears or like big wildlife.
Yeah.
Back then you probably would because they've all been hunted now, right? We've taken down like...
Yeah.
But it was way more, and you don't think about that now. When you think of camping...
There were so many horrors that she could have come across.
Right, and she didn't have shoes, I don't think, at the time either. I think they made a point of saying that, and I thought that was very interesting. But anyways,
after she came up when she jumped
from
into
the water,
river.
Yeah, and she didn't have any food, so she went 100 miles without food. And then she says she got there by God.
Yeah,
and so that's like that. Yeah. But she proved herself. It's just crazy to really think about what that journey. I mean, people get crazy about doing parts of the Appalachian Trail, and they're like prepared.
Yeah,
you know.
It was just great because I think what the vehicle of their relationship also showed and highlighted like another episode of where Harriet was calling out the privilege, which if you parallel to today, what's going on with civil rights discussion, is that there were, even then, as now, there are certain levels of privilege. And, you know, William being, you know, born a free man and living in Philadelphia the way he did, you showed, I think a lot of the conversations that they had showed a lot of how he grew and evolved through knowing her. Which I thought was great. So you understood more of what was going on in that specific time period, not even just within their relationship. Which then leads to Janelle Monáe.
That's what I was just thinking, yes.
Holy cow. And her I mean, this is a spoiler, or maybe not, if you know about any of the abolitionists, is that her character, Marie Buchanan, is fictional. But how she served was what we determined like a great piece of like historical fiction, because she really helped to fill in the gaps of Harriet's time while she was in Philadelphia, which isn't documented as much.
It kind of bridged the gap between William and Harriet, like their relationship. I don't know about you, but like when they passed the law where you couldn't
fugitive slave act.
Yes. And she's like, oh, I'm going to go back and get her, or like tell her I'm leaving. And there was all this unsaid business that you felt was said between William and Janelle's character. And you were like, oh, it's okay. So you like put that I felt like that scene had a lot more gravity and weight in that. That scene really wasn't that long. And it was that's a big, huge chunk of what that film was. And it was a huge turning point for what started the Civil War. And they chunked it down because of their relationship of being able to say, you go. And Janelle's scene when they're there, this is a spoiler alert, but she was like, Harriet wouldn't be here because she's smarter than that. Yeah. And that scared Harriet to stay away. And she's like, oh, she talks to God. Like, she sticks up for her. And that gave Harriet a strength from another female character that she thought may have otherwise been privileged because she was born free. I think that it just served as
Marie's
a lot.
Character was similar in how they paralleled her with William still, that she was another free black woman, born free black woman in Philadelphia. And, you know, she was a business owner and so you saw that, like, the way they set it up, almost like that disconnect of what Harriet saw as a reality and what Marie saw as a reality, because she felt so empowered. You know what I mean? But in a different way, is that she felt like, I mean, she had the weight of a wealthy woman, and I love that. I am not knocking that. I think that's amazing and it's phenomenal. But it showed that transition of what it was like for Harriet. Okay, I have arrived now. I'm free. What do I do next? And Marie's character shows how women working in the Underground Railroad, or persons, not even just women, but men and women, would have helped them to find work and secure a place to live. And if they were going to continue taking part in the Underground Railroad, because not all of them did. Some of them continued on and even moved further north to Canada. But I think they really showed just how some of those pieces came together for Harriet and for other people who were also escaping bondage. Because that, if people weren't as familiar with that, and it scares me to even say that out loud, but we know how short the chapter was on slavery in our history books. So
don't talk about what we want to talk about.
There might be a lot of people who really don't know about that. So I think her character, even though fictional, had a lot of truth and fact to it, and showing how those transitions would have happened.
Right, and they probably spoke for, and she had some really strong lines without.
Yes.
I mean, that character, teaching her, like, when she went back down to get her husband John and was like, look confident and composed, but don't look a white man in the eye. But if you get challenged, you bring out your gun, like, or if you get challenged, be ready to fight. I forget exactly how she phrased it, but there were like things where she taught her supposed things that we just didn't get to see along her history of that year when she was in Philadelphia before going back down to the South and starting her whole movement, which started from her trying to bring her husband out. Like, that character filled that gap of her learning.
Yeah, because and to your note to calling it a movement. Yeah, I mean, honestly, the way
a one-woman movement, she seems
seriously. No, I think you're dead on in the way the film portrays it, because she was like, no, Will, your view is myopic. My goal is to, like, look, you both you and Marie come from this thing of where, and she makes that speech, another spoiler, like, where you are spoiled.
Yes, that was what I was just thinking.
You don't know the horrors. I have family who are still in bondage.
You forget the horrors.
You forget, or you don't know, because one of the people in the room was Frederick Douglass, and of course he was enslaved before he became a free person. So she was talking to both people who were removed, that y'all don't know.
And I remember.
Y'all forget. You might know, but y'all forget. I don't forget. I can't forget, because I have people that are still there.
Exactly.
That means I cannot rest until I can get everyone that I can possibly get out. And it was great to see those moments.
Yeah, and I love how they didn't do too many speeches. I love that.
Oh, yeah.
Because it could have been,
it
like,
didn't get, like, preachy.
Yeah.
Is what you mean? Yeah.
I think
historical movies can do that sometimes.
I think the cinematographer also did Braveheart. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yes. And so, because when I was looking up the beautiful landscape, and I looked it up, but he also did Braveheart, but I loved how she had a good amount of speeches, and I think they were important to where they were noted. But it wasn't overly preachy, it wasn't too speechy, it wasn't anything but what it needed to be. But that was a beautiful scene.
Yeah.
Like, no.
Yeah, it was really great.
To lead her into being a historical figure in the Civil War, like we were talking about earlier, it's like,
yeah,
it was a needed segue, but they never wrote anything that didn't need to be said. Everything I felt like was very cut and dry, and the rest of it, they really let Cynthia's just whole body take us on the rest of that heroic journey with her. Yeah. You really felt like you knew her, which I think, speaking of that, like, going into that story and direction, I did love that approach that Cassie Lemons and Gregory Allen Howard took for both the cinematography and the direction. Because there was a moment when Harriet was about to take her last final walk into freedom, where she looks at her hands. Yes. And that was one of the moments where I cried. There were several moments where I cried. But that was one of the first moments where I cried to, like, oh my God, can you imagine what that feeling must be like? It's like, it's almost scary, but exciting at the same time. Like, oh my God, I'm free. What is that like? And they took that directly from one of Harriet's telling of what that moment was like for her as she was going in the freedom. And she says, when I found I had crossed that line, I looked at my hands to see if I was the same person. There was such a glory over everything. The sun came like gold through the trees and over the fields, and I felt like I was in heaven. All of the tears. I cried over my pizza box, because yes, I had pizza, and I cried. And the woman behind me yelled, "You go, girl!"
No, she didn't.
Yes, she did.
Because, okay, the other thing, we had to see this separately because of our, like, schedules. So, that is hilarious.
She yelled, "You go, girl," at everything. She didn't even need to go sometimes.
No.
She could have stayed.
I can't believe that woman said, whatever. Anyway, that's hilarious. But it was beautiful. And I thought the way that they captured that moment for her.
Yeah. Oh,
and
I love
Cynthia live in that moment. Was beautiful.
That moment reminded me of The Sound of Music, because it was at huge. They don't do a ton. They don't do a ton
right.
of widescreen shots.
Yes,
but she walks in that field, and I was like,
they did do it in that similar fashion. You were right.
It was very, very beautiful, and it was just gorgeous. But I will say this: when she gets out, when that guy drops her off in that carriage, and he's like, "Do you want to walk yourself into freedom?" And she says, "Yes." And he says it's 25 miles to Philadelphia. I was like, "Thank you. Give me 2 minutes, and I'll be right back in the car." When he said 25, she's like, "Okay." I'm like, "That's a quarter of what you just did." But I want to know how accurate that mileage is.
Okay.
Do you have any snacks? When I went backpacking, 26 miles took me 2 days. Okay,
well,
and I'm
that's why Harriet is a badass and we're babies.
I'm gonna say I had 50 pounds on my back, but you're probably right.
Like I said, everything that this woman endured, Harriet is a badass.
I know.
And this movie only further highlights that, okay? And so, like, the other thing, speaking of that, is that, God, story. They delved into... So I think when we look back at it, it's like, everyone would have run. We would have all tried to run. But they really also talk about, in a way that, again, to your note, isn't preachy, about how weighted the decision was to run.
Oh.
And how much it took, actually, Harriet, for her before she decided to run. For her, it was like, the only thing that she had right to is liberty and death. And if she couldn't have one, she would have the other. Right? But it wasn't, even for her, it was complicated. There were lives on the line knowing that she would run. I think they really delved into that. And I love I love the transition that they had of showing what it was like for her as she was running. Because it is. I mean, I don't know if it's just because you want to hope that the thought of freedom is bigger than any other fear you have. But it's not just the fear of bears or wolves or things. It's the fear of your family. If you still had them on that. Like, she was, I hate to say lucky because that's not one of the right terms at all. But she was, the fact that she still had her brothers and her parents still on that plantation with her is a rarity, because one of the many horrors is that your family were sold off to plantations all the time and you would never see or hear from them ever again. I can't even imagine that. No matter how much your family annoys you, I could never imagine. Never.
When she left John in the very beginning, I was just like, because we kind of briefly talked about this, was like, when we first got into this movie, you were rushing in, and for me, the film didn't start for 30 minutes. Yes. And then when the film opens up, you're just right in the thick of it. And I was thinking about it, and I was like, I didn't readjust my brain to see what I'm seeing. And so in the very beginning, when she gets basically detached from her husband, and there's like those complications, I think right there, they stir your brain to think, what if you were to choose and be separated from your loved ones and to have children? They immediately put in your head all of these decisions that we take for granted every day without even thinking about it.
Yeah.
And then they lead you on your journey with her.
Yes.
And it all of a sudden, and I think we both were just like, whoa, like, for separate reasons, but you're just like, wow, they're like, here are the consequences, and go.
Yeah.
Like the rest of the film, you're just like,
because
whoa.
The themes are so contemporary. I mean, you're talking about, you're supposedly looking back in history, right? But I mean, if you even compare to anything modern with children in detention camps on the Mexican border, Mexican-U.S. border, all these things that we try to detach ourselves that we see now. This film does that, and I love the way it effortlessly. It really does.
It's very seamless, yeah.
Yes, very seamless, and I love the sensitivity in which they approached this film, for sure.
Yeah, they did it, And Casey Lemons, I will say, because she was in so this is one of her, she wrote it looked like 2 films prior, but she wrote like episodes for TV shows. This is like one of the big films that she wrote with Gregory Allen Howard, but she was an actress better known for like Silence of the Lambs and Candyman.
Sure,
right. But and she directed this. Between writing it with him, I just think
and writing the screenplay.
It's phenomenal that she was capable of doing both of them, and I'm not going to say with like little experience because obviously she's been in that industry, but I just think it's amazing to really
something that's more of like a biopic compared to the other things that she was doing.
Exactly, and just taking all of that on, I just feel like it did all of that so much justice to the seamless work that we were describing. I feel like it's
ambitious to take on.
It is. It's really ambitious. Thank you. I was like, it's very ambitious. And between Cynthia and Casey, I was just like, man, that's
the two of them.
That's a lot of heat.
Yes. Yeah. And they both delivered.
Yeah.
At least to me. I agree. Because you were asking me like, what did you give this? And I was grappling between 4 and 5 glasses but I think I finally settled on 5 glasses because I really, it wasn't like one of those biopics where it was like Malcolm X where you really see like one with Spike Lee. It's huge, right? It was a huge picture, and God, was it like 3.5 hours long? Long film, and talks about his life from beginning to end, and you see his transition where in this film it highlights 10 years of her life and the spark that started it all. That was her. And I think that was the strength. I think that was the strength of showing that.
Well, and
of only that 10-year time period. I think that was the strength of the film.
I agree. And Gregory Howard, he did Ali. Which kind of showed a chunk.
Yes.
Showed a chunk.
Yes.
And then Remember the Titans.
Oh, God,
I loved that movie. I'm just going to say that was the first time I noticed Ryan Gosling. But my mom was like, there he is! I was like, there he is! Anyways.
Oh, that's a completely... other topic that we totally have to discuss because I really do love the film. But
anyways, I 100% agree, and I'm really excited about seeing where both Casey and Cynthia are gonna go, and I just feel like this is really rocketing both of their careers, and I totally give it 5 glasses because the cinematography was amazing.
Agree.
All of the actors,
it was beautifully shot.
It was just beautiful, and her. Such a faith-based film, and you're wanting this freedom. It completely showed you where you're going to go.
Not preachy at all. Because they showed, to your note. When they were talking about, so when she went back and she got her family members, which by the way, it brings me up with another quick point that I just have to say. So 2 quick points. Is that when she goes back to get her brothers, and they were like, I really don't trust that preacher, because one of the moments was where in his song, he was like, trust in what the master says. But again, there was always, like, if you're familiar with anything with the Underground Railroad and the songs, that songs always had meaning. And he was more or less, the song was really just to appease what the master wanted to hear, not necessarily saying what the slaves or enslaved people.
So you're supposed to overlook and or read into.
Yes, everything you had to read into in that message. There were always messages, coded messages within songs, but the pastor was never one of that side. And oh gosh, I guess we were remiss to talk about how complicated that journey was. Some of the other fictional characters of some of the people that proved to be challenges against her. That were also black, like people who were almost, that were sabotaging.
Oh yes, which is another huge point.
Yeah, But I mean, that's oh God, we could go on for
and
probably
another half hour. And that lady who I told you yelled was like, "Fuck him!"
No, she didn't.
She yelled all the things, and I was like, "Eat your popcorn, Bo."
People are very vocal at noon.
Right? I'm like, I paid $5.
You went to the noon showing of this, didn't you?
12:10 didn't show till 12:45, but yes.
Girl,
I have some more lively stories.
She went at a noon showing, and I went a 9:15 on a Monday evening.
PM?
Yeah.
You got out around 11?
Yes,
You're
I did.
Crazy.
I'm crazy. But I really wanted to see this. I really wanted to see this film because I just had to support everything about this. I love Harriet. I love
and see it when you could.
And so what now?
And see it when you could.
I had to. So, but yeah, I honestly, like, to your point, I agree with you. I think it was 5 glasses. I think it was just really well done. And I think it was smart that they focused on those 10 years because I think you were able to get a better understanding instead of trying to get like a whole
Benjamin
chunk of history that you are that you already quote unquote know from history. You just focusing on the 10 years really gets you to know her as the person
without taking it for granted.
Yes.
Which is, I think, yes. So 5 glasses, the movie outside of the casting.
The casting was excellent.
The casting was excellent, but I think the script and the cinematography were really backed up everything else, and you were completely involved. Yeah, I think beginning to end, it was just amazing. It was really, really well done.
Same. Well, guys, we hope that you get your butts in the theaters to see this. Very soon to see Harriet. It's a fantastic film. One where you will not only enjoy it from just a film aspect, but just getting to know that hero, getting to know Harriet.
Yeah, it's more than a biopic. It's a narrative.
That's our tagline. It's more than a biopic. Oh my God, guys. Well, enjoy. We hope you see this film.